Quebec MP Anthony Housefather questioned his future in the Liberal Party after a House of Commons motion on Israel's war against Hamas. Mr. Housefather, who has been a lifelong Liberal, has been the party's MP for Mount Royal since 2015. But just last week, Mr. Housefather penned an op ed for the National Post titled, "I'm proud to be a Zionist," which is increasingly a tougher position to have within Trudeau's Liberal caucus. Joining us now to discuss his latest piece about Zionism and the fractures in Ottawa as a result of the motion on Israel and Hamas is Anthony Housefather. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's start. What does it mean exactly to be a Zionist, and what was it that prompted you to write that op ed for the National Post?
So, what prompted me to write the op ed, what prompted me to make the speech in the House of Commons that I did, where I explained that there's no contradictions between being a proud Canadian, a proud Jew, and a proud Zionist, or for that matter, a proud Canadian and a proud Zionist for people who are not Jewish, is that all that Zionism means is that we believe that the Jewish people have a right to have a homeland in their indigenous land, which is Israel. It doesn't mean that the Palestinians can't have a state next door. It doesn't mean you don't want a two-state solution. It doesn't mean you approve everything the Israeli government does, but you do agree that as opposed to screaming from the river to the sea, which is to wipe Israel off the map, that Israel deserves to be allowed to exist and exist in peace, not have terrorist groups that constantly attack it. So a lot of people had made speeches in the House of Commons that were saying bad words about Zionists. We've heard chants in the streets saying how horrible Zionists are. And I'm unembarrassed and unashamed to be a Zionist because I believe, like other people, Jews deserve to have a right to a state in their indigenous homeland. And we saw what happened in the years before the Holocaust, where Jews needed to leave European countries because Germany was going to wipe them out and nobody would take them in. And Israel's the one state that Jews, when things go bad in other countries, can turn to that automatically will take them in. And that's a big deal for Jews that have suffered centuries of persecution. And I guess that's kind of my answer.
So, what has the reaction been to your piece in the National Post?
I mean, I think from most people that I talk to, it's been positive. Of course, I'm not talking to very much to people who don't believe Israel should exist. But I think a lot of people mentioned that I had given it a framework and gave them better understanding in a simplistic way of what Zionism was and why over 90% of Jewish Canadians identify with Israel and are Zionists.
And in regards to what many are calling anti Zionism, in your view, is anti Zionism anti Semitic?
I think if you would say that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, it does end up becoming anti-Semitic. Not criticism of Israel's government, but the denial of the right of Israel to exist. Yes, I mean, I think that is anti-Semitic, and it certainly would be under the IRA definition of anti-Semitism that Canada has adopted.
And what do you think are the root causes of the rise of anti Zionism?
I mean, I think in the way that you have anti-Semitism on the far right, you also have it on the far left. And on the far right, it's based on some type of white nationalism that either sees Jews as subhuman or believe that Jews are seeking to repopulate the Americas with people of color. And on the far left, you see it rooted in a belief that Jews are white, powerful, and privileged, and the oppressors. And both of them come together in a concentric circle with the same tropes, such as that Jews control the world, or that Jews are more loyal to Israel than to their own country. But anti-Zionism has become a very dangerous fad on the left. The idea that Israel is an oppressor and the Palestinians are the oppressed has made it a cause that people latch onto without even understanding the very complex history of the region and the complex roots of this issue. And it's become very dangerous for the Jewish communities around the world, including here in countries where anti-Semitism has traditionally been very low, like Canada.
And you've said publicly that the recent motion vote on the Israel Hamas war made you question your place in the Liberal Party. Can you elaborate on why you don't feel at home anymore with the Liberals? And we have 30 seconds.
I don't know I can answer that in 30 seconds, but what I could say is the vote culminated in my colleagues giving a standing ovation to the NDP sponsor of what was a terribly anti-Israel motion, and I thought that was very hurtful. And it's caused me to question whether or not my philosophical views are mostly in line with the Liberal Party anymore.
Anthony, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.